Hi everybody. Today we're going to be discussing my MIDI guitar and modeling rig. You may find that this setup's focus is different from your own, but many of the concepts can be adapted to suit your own needs. My goal for this system was to reproduce orchestral and synthesizer tracks that I've used in my recordings in a live context. So for this I needed fast and accurate pitch to MIDI conversion. I needed amp and FX modeling capabilities. I wanted a small portable stage footprint. I wanted robust MIDI control capabilities. Ideally, I wanted to be able to go up on stage and set up my laptop, turn on my programs, and then not touch the laptop again until I was packing up for the night. In the past, I've used Roland GR units such as the GR30, the GR33, and the GR55. These units all offered various advantages and disadvantages, but all were somewhat limited in terms of their onboard sounds. It's nice to have one box that does everything, but the GR series overall simply didn't have the highly detailed sounds that are available from modern sample libraries and VST instruments. In the past, I used a VG99 as a hub for this type of build, but the pitch to MIDI performance, while decent, was far from ideal. A few years ago, Fishman released their Tripleplay MIDI guitar system, which is sort of a continuation of the Axon technology. And that really opened things up in terms of the possibilities available for building this type of rig. I also acquired a Line 6 Helix system a few years ago, and I've been really pleased with the tones and functionality. This unit, if you're not familiar with it, is sort of their flagship modeler that does amps and effects, and they continue to add new features and new amps and new effects models as time goes on. So when I was contemplating a new MIDI guitar rig, I knew I wanted to use the Helix with my Variax guitars, and I wanted to use the Tripleplay system. I tried using my Roland FC300 foot control unit to control the soft synths in the laptop. This meant I needed a separate MIDI and a separate audio interface for the laptop, as well as a separate dedicated hard drive, USB hub, and power adapter for the FC300. Now the upside of this build was that I would have a dedicated floorboard for my FX and amp models, and then a separate one for just the soft synths and MIDI guitar synthesizers. That was a very large footprint, and there was a little too many pieces to that puzzle in terms of things that could potentially go wrong, that could crash or to have failures. So, weighing the complexity of that setup, I figured I would just give a shot to the Helix to perform a lot of those functions, because it has a lot of the features one would want at the heart of a MIDI guitar rig. For one, it acts as an amp effects modeler. It also acts as a USB audio MIDI interface for a laptop. It's extremely easy to program and configure. It supports Snapshots, which can be programmed to send up to 16 different CC commands simultaneously whenever you activate the snapshot. It supports advanced MIDI programming for each foot switch within patches as well. So there's a lot of functionality built into the unit. So using the Helix, I've drastically reduced the amount of gear needed on stage. The downsides are that I have far fewer foot switches available for assignments, and the performance of these software synthesizers would be reliant upon how good the Helix acts as an audio interface, coupled with Line 6's ASIO drivers. This brings up the topic of latency in general. Latency is the enemy of the MIDI guitarist. For our purposes, latency is the time between when the guitar string is struck and when a note is audibly triggered on the MIDI playback system. The more latency you have, the less connected he or she feels to their instrument. High latency forces the player to compensate and play ahead. It can also limit what you can actually play in terms of note selection. This is because in general, pitch to MIDI systems struggle more the lower in frequency a note is. Different types of pitch to MIDI use different algorithms to determine pitch, but in general, most systems struggle on the low E string to keep up with faster picking patterns. Overall latency is derived from a combination of factors. One is the efficiency of the pitch to MIDI system itself. Secondly, the software you're using to host the software samplers or synthesizers is a factor. One could use a VST host program such as Forte or Cantabile, or a program such as a DAW application such as Cubase, Studio One, or Pro Tools. The processing power and operating system efficiency of the computer you're using also comes into play with latency, and the quality of the audio interface and its drivers, particularly how small of a buffer you can use, will have an impact on your overall latency. Pitch to MIDI systems in general can vary greatly when it comes not only to latency but accuracy. Unfortunately for me, pitch to MIDI systems follow the old axiom of garbage in, garbage out. Many factors contribute to how clean your MIDI input is in relation to what you intended. If you're a sloppy player, if you scuff the strings as you move your fretting hand, or if you occasionally inadvertently bump the strings with your picking hand, if you ever so slightly hammer the note you intended to play before you strike with your pick, you may experience little glitches and artifacts in your MIDI output. This is easy to clean up if you're just recording. You can go back and you can deglitch the recorded tracks or manually edit out glitches. But it's a different story if you're performing live. A lot of these little glitches and artifacts come through as little squeaks and pops and little mice type sounds. So in general, I've found that I get fewer of those with the Fishman Tripleplay. I'm not a very clean, precise guitarist, and I've found the Tripleplay more forgiving in general in that regard. Any type of pitch to MIDI system requires the guitarist to change their thinking and approach to the instrument. Playing techniques and styles which may be very musical in nature on a regular guitar can often produce undesirable sounds in a MIDI guitar rig. Ideally, a pitch to MIDI rig should constrict a guitarist's playstyle as little as possible. Unfortunately, we aren't at that point yet, and we may never be, but the technology is certainly usable in its current form. One just needs to adapt their approach and have realistic expectations and a healthy degree of patience when traveling down this pathway. Some folks dip their toes into the MIDI guitar pool and run away after experiencing its limitations. I'm currently using a James Tyler Variax equipped with the Fishman Tripleplay. The JTV is connected to my Helix using a VDI cable, which allows bidirectional transmission of control signals between the Helix and the Variax. By using this, the Helix can control settings in the guitar, such as what model of guitar I'm using, or the tuning of the guitar. For instance, you can have a single press of a foot switch on the Helix change me from playing a Les Paul through a Marshall stack to an acoustic resonator in an open modal tuning with a completely different set of effects. It's extremely versatile. There is one additional advantage, however, to using the VDI Helix Variax combination in the context of a MIDI guitar rig. You can map the Variax's volume and tone knobs as MIDI controllers and assign these to your software synthesizers. I rarely use my volume and tone knobs, so this is pretty handy.
Okay, what we have here is the Line 6 Helix. The way I had this configured is basically I'm just using a single USB cable that goes into my laptop. That way the Helix functions as an audio and MIDI interface for the laptop. I'm using a VDI cable that connects to the Variax. This allows two-way communication, and then I'm just using some quarter-inch outs that's going into my studio recording system. Okay, so here's the laptop setup. USB going into the back, the Fishman Tripleplay receiver connected into the USB, and this is Cantabile Performer 3. That's what I'm using as the VST host. Okay, this is my laptop setup. It's a Dell Latitude 5580. It's an i7 quad-core processor. It's not a dual-core like some other i7s that you can often find in laptops. I wanted to get the quad-core. It has 16 gigabytes of DDR4 2400 megahertz RAM. It's running a 512 gigabyte SSD hard drive. It's an M2 drive. It's extremely fast, and I load everything off that one single drive. I do not need an external drive. It's very convenient. All the samples stream incredibly fast, and I do not have much delay in terms of loading up new songs in Cantabile from song to song. It's a matter of a few seconds. In addition to that, running Cantabile Performer, you can actually preload songs in a set list. You can pretty much load everything you need in your entire set list at once if you have enough RAM and if your computer can handle it, so that there is essentially no delay between changing between songs. Not so much of an issue for me. I can easily just toggle between songs in Cantabile along this side. Here you see this is the set list. So as I go through a song, I just hit a foot switch on my Helix and it goes to the next song. It's very convenient. These are the racks, the virtual racks, and in each of these you can see I have, like, for instance, a grand piano loaded here in that rack, and that's also in this rack I have Contact loading a sample library, orchestral sample library. Those two are active. And then here I'm running the Tripleplay app for control reasons. You can see that grayed out I have also a Mellotron and a Nexus synthesizer, and those are deactivated right now. I can activate those simply by hitting a foot switch on the Helix. So I hit this Helix, and there goes the Mtron. There, turn it off. I just toggle them. There's the Nexus, there's off. And this first set of synths, the piano and Contact, I have both of those controlled via one foot switch, so I can toggle both of those on and off at the same time. And basically I can set however many combinations of synths I want up and assign them to foot switches very easily on the Helix and in Cantabile. And for different songs, I have different synths and different patches loaded. I'm going to demonstrate how I can change songs with the Helix. So on my Helix, I hit one of the set of foot switches, and you'll see a message come up on Cantabile. See, it says at the bottom, that's the next song. And there it goes, it's loaded. So for this song, for instance, I have 4 synths loaded up. I have a grand piano and a set of strings that are both simultaneously assigned to the same foot switch. Then I have a Mellotron that I can kick in on a separate foot switch, as well as a lead synth sound. I'm going to switch back to another song in the set list and show you how long it takes to load. This is an extremely dense song. It has a ton of patches. So this is probably the most complex song I have loaded. So I click down, and here it goes. It's loading all the different samples, and it's ready to go. I mean, you're talking maybe 3-4 seconds for that. Okay, so here we have the set of patches that I normally use live. There are 4 different patches. Each patch has, however, the same identical top 4 foot switches. This allows me to switch between any of these patches down here, which is I have an acoustic guitar sound. I have a clean rhythm sound. I have a heavy crunch sound.
and I have a lead sound. And for each of these, I can then activate the synth sounds. As I see fit. Any combination of them. So that is one way of going about it, using 4 separate patches, or as many as you want. I like this setup with just 4. That way I don't have to jump between banks. My volume for my synths is controlled by the Tripleplay volume knob. And then if I want to have more control, I can hit this mode switch, which then allows me to switch songs in Cantabile using these 2 foot switches, bank up and bank down. And I also then have control over different stomp boxes within each patch. I can throw in a reverb or delay or whatever I want to assign for these bottom 4. In this view, you'll notice I still have the control of the soft synths. Okay. One alternative to using 4 separate patches is to use a single patch that is controlled by snapshots. Here we have an example of a patch setup for snapshot mode. The idea is I have all my tones set up within this one patch, and those are controlled by the snapshots. These bottom 4 foot switches. The first one is for an acoustic sound. The second one is for a clean sound. A crunch on the third, and a lead sound on the 4th. The advantage of this is that there is really no delay when I switch between snapshots. So if those were separate patches, you'd hear a slight dropout while the system reloads the new patch. This case, it's all the same patch, and you're simply deactivating certain modules or changing parameters. So it's much quicker. In addition to that, I still have my main MIDI control foot switches at the top. I've got my MIDI panic, and then these 3 foot switches toggle on and off different racks in Cantabile. In this mode, I can also hit the mode switch. I can get individual control of different foot switches, and I also have these 2 foot switches designed to change songs in my set list within Cantabile. The downside to using snapshots is that you are limited to the amount of amps and effects you can load within one patch. So you have to be creative in constructing the patch overall if you're trying to get a wide variety of sounds in that one patch, just using snapshots. For instance, I'm just going for an acoustic guitar on one end of the spectrum to a very processed lead sound, which is compressed with delays and distortions and overdrives and the whole 9 yards. So I need to be able to create that just from one patch, that diversity of tones. And it can be done, but you have to cut some corners. When you have 4 different patches for each of these tones, you have more to play with, so to speak, in terms of DSP and modules that you can load in each patch, because it's not being shared. The downside to that, though, is you get the slight little dropout when you change patches. Some people are able to work with it. Some people really want no dropout or no delay between patch changes. So with this system, you can use either, and then you can still have control over your software synthesizers. Again, once I set up my Cantabile on my laptop, I never have to touch it during the actual gig. I can do everything I need to do from this floorboard here. I can change guitar patches. I can turn on and off different synthesizer racks. If a MIDI note gets stuck, I can send a MIDI panic.
I can also change, using these two foot switches in this mode, between songs that are loaded in Cantabile. So it's really total control. You have to sort of design your patches with all this in mind, but it's a very powerful system, and I highly recommend trying it if you have a Fishman Tripleplay and a Helix. In any case, that's about wraps it up for this video. I may do future installments on different aspects of this rig and alternatives to some of these options. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them, or suggestions for future videos. In any case, thank you for watching, and please subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks.